world, but out of the solar system. Astronomers are trying to gather information about a comet passing Earth, first discovered on July 1st near Jupiter, with scientists not knowing where it came from. Now, eventually, they figured out this object, now named 3I Atlas, was an interstellar visitor. Astronomers in Hawaii have captured the first close-up image.
The third one was discovered on July 1st, 2025, this year, just a few weeks ago. There is a new interstellar object, at least a candidate at that time. That was just the night over which it was realized by a few amateur astronomers that indeed the Atlas survey, that's a telescope of 0.5 meter, which by coincidence discovered the third interstellar object, 3I Atlas. The reason I said you should take a vacation before October 29th is if it happens not to be a comet. So if we don't see a cometary tail, that would be really intriguing. Irrespective of the trajectory, just the fact that it's a 20-kilometer object, it cannot be, there is not enough mass in rocks in interstellar space to give you a 20-kilometer object every decade. And what I'm saying is by orders of magnitude, I'm not talking about a factor of 2, orders of magnitude, several orders of magnitude off. The numbers just don't match. So if it's not a comet, it's really strange, and we should be worried about it being technological.
So here they go again. Here they go again. Even
Welcome to Wisdom Academy, where our studies are not just intellectual exercise or spiritual entertainment. This is not about filling a church pew or passing time with religious talk. What we do here is practical training for survival, spiritual and physical survival, for the most critical time in Earth's history. For those with oil in their lamps, the future is already clear. A day is coming, sooner than we think, when no one will be able to buy or sell unless they have the mark of loyalty to a power opposed to God. There will be no last-minute cramming for this final exam. No one will be able to say, "I'll get ready when things get serious." The time to prepare is now. The period of probation, the window of mercy and preparation, is open, but it is closing fast. We are living in the time of the end. The fast-fulfilling signs of the times declare that the coming of Christ is near at hand. The days on which we live are solemn and important. The Spirit of God is gradually but surely being withdrawn from the earth. This is not a drill. This is not theory. This is not for show. The choices we make today, the truths we embrace, the character we form, these are the building blocks of our spiritual and physical DNA. When the crisis breaks, it will be too late to build a foundation. The time for that is now. At Wisdom Academy, we recognize that preparation for the end of the times is not just spiritual, but also physical. We have the material and the facilities to train people for this time. Practical skills, survival strategies, and a community of support. An untrained soldier is already a dead soldier. We are here to make sure you are equipped, body and soul, to stand firm when the world's final test comes. We also believe it is vital to recognize the signs of the times, the rapid rise of central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, digital IDs, sweeping legislation to centralize control, unaccountable surveillance laws, and the growing tide of moral lawlessness are not random events. These are clear signs, speaking in unmistakable language, that the world is moving toward the very crisis foretold in prophecy. Ignoring these realities, whether out of fear, denial, or comfort, will be fatal. Now is the time to wake up, to prepare, and to stand on the side of truth, no matter the cost. So as we open the Word together, let's do it with the seriousness of soldiers in training, not spectators at a show. Let's prepare, not just to survive, but to stand, unmoved, unbought, and unbowed, when the world's final test comes. But before I go any further, I have to ask myself, what am I going to do when I can no longer buy or sell, unless I compromise my faith, just as Revelation prophesied? What will I do when the pressure to give up my beliefs comes, not just from the world, but from friends, colleagues, maybe even my own family? When new laws demand total conformity, when surveillance is everywhere and privacy is gone, will I stand firm or will I bend? When ownership is stripped away and I am called to trust God for my daily bread, physically and spiritually, will I truly trust Him or will I panic? When the voices around me say, "Peace, peace, don't worry, everything will be fine," am I listening to those who comfort me with illusions or to those who warn me with truth? Am I preparing now in this time of mercy? Or am I waiting for a more convenient season that may never come?
Welcome, everyone. So, Harvard scientists believe that in October this year, we could have a visit from space, extraterrestrials. And according to the scientists, and by the way, if you study at Harvard, you have a higher IQ than us normal people. So they must be right, correct? But I find that very interesting because if you don't know, Alice Bailey, we mentioned that before, I think some month ago, founder of today it's called Lucy's Trust. Before, formerly it was called Lucifer's Trust. If you're a Christian, you know who Lucifer was and is. Predicted I think she called it, I have it, the externalization of the hierarchy. And she predicted that this will take place actually around 2025. That's quite interesting. And by the way, Lucy's Trust is an NGO at United Nations. And United Nations receives advice from Lucy's Trust. That's quite interesting especially for those of you that are working with United Nations. The Great General Assembly, she wrote in her book, and I have a summary here from Melanson. One of the most striking aspects of Bailey's work in the seemingly predictive nature, particularly regarding events projected to occur around 2025, the book speaks of a great general assembly of the hierarchy and the externalization, suggesting that spiritual entities will manifest physically in the world. And these claims, when viewed through a critical lens, appear to align closely with what we now recognize as the Illuminati's plan for a new world
order. So there you have it, friends. Welcome to Wisdom Academy here, 2025, first Sabbath, first Saturday in August. The time is flying. Well, this is not a news channel, and I'm not here to bring the news, but in the context of the topic today, which is a continuation of the study I'm presenting here, studies I'm presenting here. I hope you have your thinking cap on today also, because I'm going to ask you a lot of questions. See, I love to ask questions, critical questions, provoking questions. For me, it's more like a psychological test sometimes, is to see, are people listening? You know, are they awake? Do they still, or do they know? Do they still, and so on. I'll go on. Yesterday, we had a major escalation. This is not world policies, it's an escalation. Donald Trump orders 2 nuclear power submarines to be moved after highly provocative comments, it says here, from ex-Russian president. So these submarines are being placed somewhere around Russia. Of course, you can imagine the consequences. Mr. Trump made these remarks after, I think, the former president Dmitry Medvedev said the US president should stop threatening Russia. There has been some threats from Donald Trump and United States that he's going to hit everybody dealing with Russia with the punitive actions. And the Russians took it as an ultimatum and added that Mr. Medvedev added that this is a threat toward war between Russia and United States. Sometimes, I think many times, especially when I'm doing my weeding, we have a lot of weed here in Denmark, and that's most of my gardening time, I catch myself wondering, how much evil am I really willing to accept as a person, as a Christian? And I mean, is there a certain amount of injustice or suffering that I just shrug off? As long as it doesn't hit too close to home, right? I mean, we can switch off the news. The submarines are somewhere around Russia. They're not close to Denmark or Europe or wherever you are, right? But then I ask myself, what if I discovered that I had cancer? Would I just ignore it? That's one option. Some people do, hoping just it won't get worse and it's gonna disappear by itself. And we know it's not gonna do that. So, of course, I'm not going to ignore it personally. I don't want it gone. Every single last cell, cancer cell. And so why do I tolerate so much wrong in the world around me? Or people say I have no power. I've got nothing to say. Nobody's going to listen to me, and so on and so on. You've heard probably the excuses. Maybe I've gotten too used to evil around me. Maybe I'm thinking I've traded out evil with comfort, outrage with comfort. Maybe I keep silent out of fear to lose my job, what people are going to say about me. Am I going to be censored? Maybe this is just the way things are, right? But then I also wonder, Should we wait for someone else to fix it? Maybe a politician, maybe Donald Trump, he promised a lot of people, or maybe some of you. I know a lot of Christians, even my own denomination, they went out and voted for Donald Trump because he promised peace. He said he's a Messiah. He said he's a man of peace. A few months ago, he was telling us he's going to stop the war in 24 hours. And what do we see today? He's actually escalating by threatening with nuclear power. So should we wait for another politician? Maybe the new party coming. If you live in the United States, you know, Elon Musk is coming up with a new party. I don't remember exactly. Anyone here? What is the name of the new party? It doesn't matter. There is a new party coming here in Denmark as well. Maybe the new technology. Maybe AI. Maybe transhumanism, they have solution. I don't know, maybe I should go for the singularity, right? Because when that is going to happen, and that's actually the climax, that's the main goal for the technocracy being implemented around the world, that's going to wipe away all the darkness, all the evil. But then, I know I'm a Christian, and I'm asking the question, probably a lot of people ask the same question. Yeah, God is. So if there is a God, how much evil should he allow before stepping in? And if there is no God, what are we going to do? Just hope for the magic? Maybe the meteorite, maybe the aliens are going to solve the problems. But what about the evil? Should it be a line that needs to be drawn, a moment when enough is enough? And if that moment comes, what about you and I? Do I have a part to play? Or am I just a spectator? This is something I can switch off and just move on to the next news channel, or maybe some entertainment, maybe some nice Christian music. That's going to make it. And so these are some of the questions which keeps coming back to me. And maybe you've asked these questions too. And so the topic today, this is a study, and again, I'm inviting you to take on your thinking, critical thinking cap. And this is a topic which I know some Christians, at least, they have studied. But I'm going to take a probably new angle to this study. Because see, I've been thinking, if I took the same angle like a lot of devoted Christians are doing, I'm going to probably lose most of you. If I'm just going to put on here, just some doctrinal understanding of, let's say, one or another Christian denomination, a lot of people are going to turn on their biases. Well, actually, they're going to react by their biases, and they're going to say, oh no, not those Adventists again, with their maybe some crazy ideas about the end time. This is my study. This is a study which I believe it's built on evidence, and it's my attempt to wrestle with the questions that I've just put here to you. Because I believe, as I do mention in our manifesto here at Light Channel TV, this is the time, there has never been a time to face these questions as it is now. It is also my understanding and my experience that many today have become so deeply entrenched. And when I'm saying entrenched, I'm thinking mentally. And of course, mentally, this is how we act in their own cognitive biases, which is that any challenge to whatever preconceived belief, opinion, idea, it's met not with openness, but with a swift dismissal. And so the reaction has been, and it is there, and that's my experience, being dismissed as a dissent, as a conspiracy theorist, ignoring truth. It's a label that people are going to put on you and on me instead of listening, instead of taking the information, the warning. Maybe this is something I need to do. Maybe it's something which is dangerous. Maybe it's a disease. Maybe it's something I need, or maybe my family or those I love. But this is a label. This is a reaction, which I've understood. It's a psychological reaction coming from a natural man's perspective, which is trying to deflect, derail, to protect the comfort zones. Don't tell me anything that I need to change. But if you are a follower of Christ, if you follow these programs, and these programs are actually meant not just for Christians, and I'm especially targeting here, as I mentioned before, the agnostics. I have a lot of friends and family agnostics, so I do these programs. I don't do programs for my own confirmation bias choir. I could do that. A lot of people do that, and I could just, everybody is going to agree, and we go happy, and that's fine. I like to challenge myself, and I like to challenge people by asking a lot of questions. And so, if you're a follower of Christ, would you say that a reaction, like I just mentioned before, conspiracy, coming from a defensive heart, would you reconcile that with a humble, teachable spirit, which the Holy Spirit is supposed to call us to embody? Would you reconcile this kind of reaction? Because I can't. If I just deflect and avoid any information and anything that people are telling me, maybe out of love, maybe to correct me, is this resistance not just a subtle rebellion? Anyway, this is a tough topic today. Before we continue, this is an introduction to a series of topics which I've been thinking for a while to do, and last week I had a conversation with a friend, and basically I'm going to mention that in my presentation about this topic and how she doesn't belong to our denomination, but as I understand, she's open, if you're watching this program, to listen and to think and to discuss. So this is very interesting. And if you haven't guessed yet, if this is about something which some people call close of probation. What is that? What is that? Anyway, we're going to go there. It's a really weird, right? So to me, just to put it short here, right from the beginning, it's when mercy ends and evil, it's finally judged. And so let's pause and reflect. The last study I presented here on Light Channel TV was Freedom's Funeral, right? Who Killed the Moral Compass? Some of you watched this program. And it was kind of an introduction and a platform to realize where we are and what we've done so far to the next series of studies. And so I'm asking again the question, as I asked last time, is the loss of the moral compass in today's world just a random crisis? Or is it like cancer, which is growing silently within the body of society? What would you say? You know, if you're a medical professional and you don't have to, I mean, it's kind of common knowledge today, cancer cells start small, often unnoticed, but if left unchecked, we know that they're gonna spread all over and they're gonna threaten the whole body. So my question to you comes here. I have some very provoking questions to you here. A lot of questions. And I want some answers. I want answers from you here. I have some people here with me in the studio, and I would like answers from you too if you follow with me live. And so if cancer represent evil and moral decay, cancer cells, should we tolerate them growing inside of us just because we hope the body will heal by itself regardless of my lifestyle? Any answers? Difficult questions. Well, the Bible teaches that sin, which we decided in the last study, we discovered, we already knew it's amoral behavior. Lawlessness, that's amoral. It's like cancer that corrupts the whole person. And so if we ignore the cancer, do we risk losing everything? I believe so. And so how long should mercy wait before decisive action is necessary? And I'm getting somewhere with these questions. These are not random questions. These are, of course, leading questions. I'm not trying to manipulate anyone, but these are leading questions. We need to ask these critical questions. You know, I've seen a lot of study done on this topic, which are very interesting, but I see these studies, they just jump right into the point, leaving actually the whole body, and they just present maybe the skeleton and some of the main points, and people are left with a lot of questions. So I'm asking the questions which I heard, which I have and I had before here to build up. Where are we going with this topic? You know, if I just presented this topic and I put the title there and I just put some whatever Bible verse I think it's going to support my presentation, I'm sure a lot of people are just going to shrug it off as some weird doctrinal, whatever people are going to call it, that belongs to some weird conservative, fanatical, fundamentalist Seventh-day Adventists. But I'm not going there because I'm asking these questions and I'm expecting you don't have to answer, but I'm expecting you to think about them and to give yourself the answer to these questions. How long should mercy wait before decisive action is necessary? And see, Christianity at large is presenting a God of love. God love forever? Is mercy forever? Or there should be some action? Is there a biblical limit? And I have a Bible verse here. To God's patience. Is God stopping his mercy? Is he stopping to love after this? These are questions, real questions. And I have some more questions, don't worry. I'm not finished with my questions. If the body of humanity is sick, and I believe so, okay? If the first reaction to some perceived threat as the President of the United States and of Russia is to send my nukes into your neighborhood, that's sick, in my opinion. That means humanity is sick. I don't know if you know. Well, that's another topic, so I'm not going there. Can it truly get better by simply prolonging mercy without confronting the root cause? You know, should just God go ahead, you know, just prolong the mercy? The mercy, you know, where do you think humanity is going to end? Well, I think we're going to kill ourselves. I think we are self-destructive. That's my opinion right here and right now. By just looking at the news, by just looking at what's happening around the world. That's so if God is going to prolong his mercy, let's say for 50, and some people say, oh no, yeah, I believe in God, yeah, Jesus, that stuff, he's going to come back in 100 years. And so really, I think we're going to be dead by that. Look what's going on around. So what does it mean? And here I have I know it's early in the morning if you're here in Europe. I don't know if you had your Hebrew, Aramaic class recently. What does it mean to be, and I have a quote here which is very famous. It's in Aramaic. It's Daniel 5:27. If you have your Bible, look it up. In the context of moral decay. What does it mean? And I've already had it in my title. Okay, what does it mean? In the context. That's a very important question, because there is a history of the world. There has been a time of mercy, a time of probation, and then God said stop. So if you believe in God, you don't have to believe in God. You would, by just looking at the history of the world, be able to see through history, through the geology, that there has been time of probations. So Daniel 5:27. Anyone here? What does it says there? Anyone online? Okay, you saw the title. Mene mene. And the rest you know. And what does it mean? Are we as individuals and society actively fighting the cancer of evil, or have we become numb and complacent? I think we have become numb and complacent. At large, mostly. I mean, in my compass, if I take my compass, I don't know about you, this is pure evil. To threaten each other with nuclear annihilation. I mean, that's kind of the ultimate evil. I mean, okay, you threaten me, I threaten you, you bomb me, I'll bomb you. And by the way, I was just reading these statements. Both United States and Russia, they have an automatic system, and they had it for many years. I didn't know that. Even if I was living under the Soviets, that there is an automatic system. If somebody's bombing Kremlin, there are obviously hidden nuclear bombs. If United States, it's bombing Kremlin, there are nuclear bombs hidden around the world that is going to annihilate Washington. Didn't know that. And vice versa. And so this system has been in place. I think they kind of took it down in the 90s, but it's up and running again. So that's, for me, in my moral compass, it's pure evil, because that means a total annihilation. I have a different perspective on final events, so that's another thing. So I still have some few questions here to go, because these are leading questions. And we need some answers to these questions. If God's mercy has limits, let's decide that God's mercy has limits for now. What responsibility do we have as people? So if you're a follower of Christ, if you're a Christian, do you think you have a responsibility to prepare before that close of probation? And I know it's scary for a lot of people. They don't even want to think about this. I hear some young people, I'm young, I want to live my life. I don't want Jesus to come here and now. Friends, let's ask these questions. And again, this is an introduction study to this topic, because if again and again, I've seen this study many times, and I've seen the reaction of people, especially young people, especially agnostics, and especially Christians from other denominations. So I know they're very good, trustworthy, faithful, even in my own denomination. They put this study there. You just go line by line and verse by verse, and that's it. They present it to the world. But I think it's also important to try to understand that our target audience, it's actually not my friends or my peers, which I know already they agree with me. These are not the people I'm supposed to present these studies to, this information. I'm trying to reach those people that doesn't know. These are the target people that we want to reach at Light Channel TV. That's the mission call. It's going to the world. It's not going to my world. I don't know, it's just confusing to me to see many times that we kind of forget who we are we talking to. So anyway, if God's mercy has limits, can we afford to live without a moral compass any longer, hoping for a better future without real change? Can we afford? And so I brought the news here up to date in the context of these studies. I don't even have, when I'm doing these studies, I have, of course, a structure and a strategy. And I'm thinking just, okay, I'm going and I have my AI bot, which is searching for the news. And I do search for the evidence. And I'm not just taking everything which is popping up there. But this is it, every single day brings more distraction, and so on. And so can we afford to just go by without a moral compass? Because when it comes to the close of probation, this topic, it's not, a vindictive, a cruel God just judging and hating people because of their sin. This has been kind of the lens which has been placed on this topic. And so I turn it upside down and I'm asking questions. I'm asking you if you're agnostic. And I know a lot of agnostic people that are actually thinking morally. Can we go on without a moral compass? A lot of people, even here in little Denmark, are asking this question. Because there is no moral compass any longer. Any political decision nowadays being taken here in Denmark is just about feelings, and it's just about democracy, whatever they claim to have a majority. There is no moral compass. There is no longer a right and wrong. So where do you think this is going to end, friends? And so what role will you and I play when the time is up? Will I be among those fighting who fought the cancer? Or will I be among those who ignored it until it was too late? So I made this analogy about cancer cells in society. And it's not just about corruption in terms of financial corruption. People being bribed and taking money under the table and so on, and corrupt politicians. It's about the society as such, corruption in society. Because we as society, we do accept corruption. We do nothing as at large as society. We just go by and look the other way and hope for the better, and someday it's going to hit us right in our head. And that's my own experience. And I have a lot of testimonies and examples to give. And so I would like to encourage you to revisit our last study, Freedom's Funeral. If you haven't seen it, it's the precursory to this study. It's kind of the platform with these questions in mind. And so consider where these, maybe you've heard this term before, close of probation, and maybe you basically shrug it off. This sounds crazy. I don't understand. This is some weird Christian. So if you look at this topic through this lens, you will see that this is the inevitable climax to the moral collapse that we see around us. And it's not a doctrinal issue. I know we see different, myself and maybe other Christians, we see difference. And I'm going to mention some of these here. But this is, for me, it's a climax of moral collapse. And so, my friends, I just want to dare you to think that the close of probation, it's not God's choice, It's humanity's choice. Did you know that? Did you think it this way before? So the questions I know are very difficult, but I also believe, and especially if you follow here on Light Channel TV, you're an honest person, you're an open-minded, you demand honest answers. And I know a lot of people, I know a lot of agnostics people that are demanding honest answers from Christianity. Okay, so we shouldn't be packing this into some kind of a very stiff doctrine, because this is not religion, like many people think. We learned last time in last study that religion cannot be separated from moral values. They belong together. So how much evil should we accept? How long should mercy wait? If you're afraid, if you don't like this term, don't use it, close of probation. I can give you some other terminology. What will I do? What will you do when your time is up? And so I'm going to make some comparison here. I know there are many more, but I just thought about 4 major worldviews. And I'm not really taking the other religions here, the major religions, but I'm giving you at least from a Western society here, Western Europe, let's say, some of the worldviews on the end times and the moral crisis. And so we have the secular behavior. Religion is nonsense. This is religious nonsense. Just live here and now and have fun as much as possible. You know, we live on an island. There is another island near to us here, and they just had fun here this week. They had some kind of festival. We could hear the drums. It's quite but the wind, you know, coming from there. So they had a lot of fun, I suppose. Right? But I'm asking these questions to my secular friends. If morality is just a personal choice, as it is in a secular mind, mostly, how do we decide what's right and wrong when it affects others? Right? Oh, Denmark, you know, the headlines this week. There are calls to kind of intervene from international society to stop the genocide. Oh, we're not ready. Denmark is not ready to do it, says the foreign minister, Denmark. He's speaking on behalf of the whole Denmark. Wow. It's a personal choice. So there is no right and wrong. It's a political choice, right? So they just need to have some conversation in the parliament and to come up to the conclusion, yeah, maybe, he said maybe later we're going to decide if we're going to intervene and ask them to stop the genocide, maybe, right? Can a society, my question again, can a society survive long-term without a shared moral foundation? My clear answer is no. And I'm not a prophet. I'm not seeing into the future. I'm seeing into history. If evil is ignored or accepted for the sake of fun or convenience, what happens when the consequences become unavoidable, friends? You had a major, if you're living in part of East Russia, Far East, and Japan, South Korea, South China Sea, they had one of, I think it was labeled the 5th largest earthquake on Earth ever registered. I think it was 8.9 on Richter scale this week. So it's for these people, you know, there has been a major earthquake and then tsunamis. And so are we willing to gamble our eternal destiny, coming back, on the hope that religious nonsense is wrong? Because this is my understanding to my secular friends. They're gambling. You're gambling your eternal destiny. by just shrugging this off as religious nonsense. And again, I'm taking this from a moral perspective. So don't worry about some Christian denomination or religion or whatever doctrinal you think. This is some kind of fanatic little fundamentalist group somewhere there in Little Denmark. They're even offshoots, Anyway, let's take second view here. It's the secular transhumanistic option. We talked about this before. I think we made a study here, Light Channel TV. I don't remember exactly if I did it in English or Danish, but we talked about the singularity. And this is where the title, the ultimate singularity as salvation. Yeah. If you didn't know, the singularity, it's a hypothetical point where artificial intelligence surpasses human intelligence, potentially solving all human problems and creating a new era of existence. It promises control over biology, environment, even consciousness, offering a second chance through technology rather than divine intervention, end quote. And that comes from the man which kind of invented this term, singularity. And so if you didn't know, this is actually going right now. There are a lot of programs. There have been programs, and CIA has just confirmed, if you follow the news, United States, Tulsi Gabbard, I think it's her name, or Gabbard. Anyway, she just confirmed, all these conspiracies. We're talking about MK Ultra. We're talking about these predictive programming programs, which CIA has been running since the 50s. So the idea behind the singularity, it's actually to remove your free will. Because when this is happening and biology is going to be merged with technology, with artificial intelligence, which it means that artificial intelligence takes over. So that's another option, and I'm not going to go there into the deep of this study. I just want to mention that's another second option, friends. And a lot of people actually are embracing this. And even more people are doing it unconsciously. And if you didn't know that, just look at people. They just run around with their smartphones, with their computers, with whatever, with their tablets. They're basically hooked nonstop. And there is a lot of stuff going on here. I could go on for hours just showing you the evidence of what's going on. It's happening right now. So either you take it as an option or not, this is already happening. This is the second option you have. To end evil. Okay. No evil, no free will. That's the second option. But my question is that, can technology truly solve the problem of evil, or it's only going to mask the deeper spiritual issues? And I got my answer to that. I don't think they will. I don't think so. Not from a biblical perspective. And so what happens to the soul, I've already said that, your conscience, which is your free will and moral responsibility in a world ruled by machines. What happens? Non-existence. That's the point. Total control. Why do you think they want to implement all this digital ID? Why do you think they want to implement what we've already mentioned so many times? It won't give you any option. It will give you only one choice: to obey or suffer the consequences. And so people think this is just conspiracy, And so people shrug off when they hear that terminology, close of probation. But see, friends, this is not something God is bringing because he's a vindictive God on the world, on society. We do it ourselves. We don't have to, wait for God to bring us the judgment because we are already doing it. So it's the promise to my secular friends which have embraced the singularity and the technology, the technocracy. Is this a hope or a distraction from the real spiritual battle? think it very careful. Do you really hope that you'll become an everlasting biotechnological machine and could actually put your consciousness, your memories into a machine and live forever? I don't want to go into the technical details. I'm just taking here the psychological, the spiritual perspective. And so would you decide a machine or a human-made system to decide your eternal fate? Would you do that? Because a lot of people are doing this. They're hooked to their smartphones. They can't live without it. And so I'm taking now the third option. There is one more. This is the third option. Christianity at large, they promote an end-time scenario which is called a second chance, Israel theology, and secret rapture. That's another option for what I understand and what I would call the end-time close of probation. And so this requires a lot of study, but if you look around, a lot of things happening around the world today because of this technology. And I don't want to go into that study. But there is another option here, which is the last option. But let's talk a little bit about this one here. I think I forgot to put my questions about this here. We talked about this, and maybe you come from this background here, and maybe you're, a believer from other denomination, and the idea is that Christians, interpret Israel in prophecy primarily. Well, some people, they do it primarily, they do an interpretation of Israel today as a spiritual people of God, those who accept Christ, both Jews and Gentile. But a major part of Christianity, they understand Israel to be the real, literal political nation of Israel today. And they understand that the political Israel of today will find their ultimate fulfillment in the church, the true spiritual Israel. And there are some Bible verses which are being used to support this understanding. Now, there is this historicist method and understanding that is going backward using biblical principles and taking the whole Bible into its context, and do also place in the understanding a very simple word which it seems to me that many Christians are avoiding when it comes to this understanding, and that word is if. All the promises made to Israel and also actually everybody was based on a word, if. What does it mean? Anyone here? That's a condition. That's a condition. Anyway. So let's go on, because here. And then there is this secret rapture, which was popularized in the 1800s by, I think, John Nelson Darby. We talk about dispensationalism and so forth. And this theology, they separate Israel and the church into two distinct groups with separate prophetic destinies, which will, after the rapture, as I understand, kind of merge back again. That's one understanding. So my point is that this option, by focusing on this secret escape, rapture, many Christians neglect the biblical call to active preparation, warning, endurance through the final crisis. So that's another option. And the last option here I'm going to take today, you got here, when it comes to the close of probation. Knowing but doing nothing. Is that you? living in limbo. And I've got some, I was thinking, what's going on here? Because there are psychological, there are spiritual, and there are physical consequences. And I think I mentioned this before here. I'm not going to go through these studies. But again and again, we have this psychological reaction. Holding contradictory beliefs or ignoring known truth causes psychological discomfort. And so people will try to reduce by denial or avoidance. That's a known fact. This is psychology of the natural man. When a natural man is not controlled by the Holy Spirit, there will not be an open mind. People will just avoid, will just deny, will ignore, will do whatever it takes. You know, go away. I've seen people, they just walk away. And then you have the anxiety and depression. Studies have shown that unresolved spiritual or existential questions correlate with higher anxiety and depressive symptoms. See, these questions about life. Am I going to die? When I'm going to die? Is this true? Is going to be an end of the world? These are existential questions, friends, that we need to answer. We need to have an answer. We need to have an honest answer. We need to give the world an honest answer, our family and friends and peers and so on. And avoiding the answers to these questions are actually going to give us anxiety and depression. These are studies which have been done over and over and over again. And because we avoid the answers to these questions, why do you think it's one of the reasons we have such a major increase in antidepressive medication? Well, let's go to that party. Let's go to that travel. Let's take that trip. You know, let's do that. Let's do that. Everything else but the core. Decision paralysis. I think this is where, anyway, avoiding action on important spiritual decision can lead to a sense of helplessness and stagnation. Avoiding action. This is a study done in 2004. That's quite interesting. I would say so, you know. And so many people I'm experiencing, including some within our own denomination, they do have an understanding intellectually, maybe, about the biblical truth, about the end times and this close of probation, but fail to act. And so this state of spiritual procrastination or limbo, knowing but not doing. According to these studies and according to my own experience, they will have profound psychological, spiritual, and physical consequences. And that's what some psychological consequences, which of course somehow it's damaging my life. If I live a life in anxiety and I'm taking medication because I have these anxieties, I don't want to think about all the bad things which is happening. A lot of bad things is happening, and I'm not saying just to talk about the bad things, but I'm here to ask the questions, are there any solutions, and what are these solutions? And which options do we have? And so the call is, let him who thinks he stands take heed lest he fall. And so in this context, take heed. Do something. Action. Behold, now is the accepted time. Behold, now is the day of salvation. And so the Bible is not silent on the psychological reaction and the psychological consequences and the psychological damages which we are actually doing to ourselves by not taking action on these fundamental questions. So living in limbo, I believe, creates chronic stress. This is crazy, isn't it? You know, people just shrug it off, and I'm talking to a lot of people, even my own denomination. They shrug it off. Yeah, that's your doctrine. This is not doctrine, friends. It's actually the answer to some of the most existential life questions. It's the climax of human history. So yeah, I do believe that living in this kind of limbo is going to create chronic stress, anxiety, and cognitive dissonance. I've seen it on me, I've seen it on other people and a lot of people, and this is what I believe is Christianity at large. And we know that when people hold these conflicting beliefs or hear conflicting information with preconceived beliefs, they will avoid listening. And this is where you have the conspiracy theory label. They will avoid taking decision. And so today we can switch on the 5 billion channels on YouTube. Let's listen to some music. But these are important matters. And to me, it leads to mental strain, mental instability. And so we've been warned in the Bible against as dangerous and fatal to the soul as it can be. See, I've mentioned here just 4 options, and we can pick any one of them. But all of them are going to be fatal, one way or another. So it doesn't matter, there is no turning back, there is no like second chance. That's not something I believe on. And so please challenge me if you believe I'm wrong. Knowing the truth, but not acting, hardens the heart and quenches the Holy Spirit work. And we have also in the Bible the parable of the 10 virgins. And the 5 of them. And so there are some physical consequences. Stress-related illness. That's strange, right? Oh, just because I don't believe in that weird doctrine about close of probation, that's not going to affect me. That's crazy. You know, but just take it the other way. Because research links distress with increased risk of cardiovascular disease, weakened immune function, and other health problems. Wow, this is crazy. And I'm not twisting these studies just to put it into my opinion here, friends. You know, we could just take another option. Just go to the festival here. People are not able to sleep. I know people that are living like this. Anxiety over unresolved spiritual matters can cause insomnia and fatigue. That's a study. That's a clinical study. You can go online. I have the link here. Studies suggest also that spiritual well-being correlates with longer life expectancy and better health outcomes. Wow, that's really crazy, isn't it? So see, I like to do microscopy on this here because for me, like I said, I'm talking here about life-threatening cancer. Okay, I'm talking here about a lifestyle. This is not a doctrine for me, friends, which I can just argue with whoever wants to argue. I'm not here just to argue with anyone here. I'm presenting information which I find very essential for not just our well-being here and now, mental, physical, and spiritual, but also our eternal well-being. So did you ever think it this way? Did you ever study the close of probation this way? Did you ever hear about the close of probation from this angle? Because I believe that if we just go into the topic, that's going to be very scary to a lot of people. And like I said, in my experience, a lot of people are just going to shrug it off. Like something crazy. They don't understand. So I want you to understand, I'd like you to understand where I believe God and the Bible is coming from when we're going to study the close of probation. So again, living in this spiritual limbo, knowing the truth, but doing nothing. It's going to create this cycle of spiritual, physical decline, and even health risks. I mean, come on. If you have insomnia, that's pretty bad, isn't it? There's a lot of side effects coming out of it. And you can't really have a good life. You can't have a, productive life if you have insomnia. See? No decisive action to avoid the consequences and to prepare for this time. Can you avoid it? Yeah. I don't know. Anyway. So these are the references here. If you want to search them for yourself online, you can take a screenshot of this slide here. So I do my homework and I do some background studies for the statement I'm doing here. And so there are a lot of biblical examples. Some know the biblical truth intellectually, but let the cares of this life, skepticism, they don't like the messenger, complacency, keep them from acting. Some people, they will say, I'll get ready when it happens, if it happens in my lifetime. And you could say, yeah, if I'm not going to be alive when this is going to happen, why do I care? You don't know if you're not going to be alive, so you should care. And therefore, and some people just dismiss it as just religious talk. And I believe it's a careless, faithless, amoral attitude, which is going to bring me in a position where I'm going to delay the urgent preparation and witness. Because if I prepare myself, it's because I believe it. It's going to happen. And therefore, I'm going to tell other people. And so when we moved here, I've started, digging the ground here and preparing the garden. And I remember it was a couple of elderly neighbors. They were walking by and kind of smiling at me. Why are you doing such a big garden? And I kind of told them my, end time perspective, more like from a Gnostic perspective. I didn't know if they were Christians. And, I remember their faces. They were smiling. Like, on their face I could read, this guy, he's kind of, crazy, a little bit weird. That's what they said. And then, this COVID came a couple of years later. And then we went very close here to Denmark to no vaccine, no buy. And so they were walking by. And I could see their faces, friends. There was another face. And the man said to me, yeah, great idea, good idea. That's what he said. So to witness is not just about, putting a lot of doctrines or religious talk or whatever, prophetic interpretation. If you know the truth but do nothing, as I'm asking in the manifesto for these programs, Wisdom Academy, what will you say, what will you do when time is up? Intellectual knowledge is not going to save us without a heartfelt commitment and action. And so how many warnings will you and I ignore before it's too late? I think people are willing to risk their eternal consequences for here and now comfort and some fun and distraction. And why is that? That's another study. So I have a final challenge for these 4 options here. Because we live today in a society where the moral compass is practically hammered, and so feeling decides the truth age has arrived. So which option suits your feelings, my friend? Which worldview will you choose to live by? The carefree secularist who ignore moral truth? The transhumanist who trust technology over God? Maybe the Christian who hopes for a secret escape without preparation? Or the one who knows but lives in limbo, risking everything? And so, for as long as we live, we have to take a stand, because our eternal destiny. I don't know, I heard some people, they don't want to live forever. Have you met them? I did, here in Denmark. They say, well, that's kind of utopia. I'm fine with this life, and when this is over, this is it. And I'm thinking, man, that's... Anyway, we've just examined here 4 distinct paths people might choose in response to the moral decay and the looming end of time. Okay? So we don't have... I'm sure there are more. There are some major religions and a lot of people I know around the world. But each path in its own way avoids what I would call the profound reality of what is coming. So close of probation, it's a consequence of human choice. It's not God's vindictive judgment because he's going to be cruel, or he is. And so if there is a moment, a final moment, when these choices become final, I believe so. When we die, but if we're going to be alive when these moments, when these final events are going to happen. So what if there is a point of no return? What if the opportunity to choose God, to repent and to prepare is going to run out if you're going to have a car or motorcycle accident? Have you thought about it? So it's going to bring us to the last short part. No worries, I'm not going to make it long. This often misunderstood concept of close of probation. Yeah, so I do have my understanding. So please listen careful here. That's a biblical, I believe, understanding. I'm open. It's the moment when Jesus Christ ceases his intercessory ministry in the heavenly sanctuary. That's very simple. That's in a nutshell. That's according to the Bible, and I can argue there is a lot of study based on this statement. This is a biblical historicist understanding. And one of the Bible verses we have basing this understanding is that he that is unjust and so on, let him be unjust still. And so there will be a time in history where God actually, is Jesus here, is going to make this statement. This is the final statement. We don't know when this is going to be done, but I'm going to show you something in just a few minutes. And so for every individual, a decision is going to be made, living or non-living individual, either for eternal life or for eternal loss. And so in this context, the understanding of purgatory doesn't fit in the Bible. That's a human invention to make money, and a lot of money, and to scare people into giving a lot of money. That's called manipulation. So yeah, the term of close of probation, you won't find it in the Bible. It's just a terminology which came up. What would you call it? It's a concept. And so during this judgment, when this probation, when this time is closed, God reviews the lives of those who have professed faith, first of all. determining who truly belongs to him. It's not for the secular people, it's not for the transhumanists, it's for those who believe that, well, I belong to God, so therefore so and so. And that's the understanding here. It is not a secret event. It's a divine decree in heaven that has eternal implication on earth. And final implication, because I'm going to show you something, a map here, a chart which I did here shortly, which I'm going to build the next studies on. That's basically it. What is the close of probation? And therefore it precedes, comes before what the Bible calls the time of trouble and the outpouring of the 7 last plagues, during which there is no more opportunity for repentance and salvation. So I hope I make my point. I made my point. I hope I can explain to you why the close of probation is an imminent consequence of the moral decay, of the loss of the moral compass in the world today. And so we can't avoid it. We can't just ignore it. Well, you can try to ignore it and see what's happening. But it's going to be your choice, and it's going to be your fatal choice. That's the essence of this terminology, this concept of close of probation. If you want God to draw a final line, if you want evil to stop here, who's going to stop it? There is only one entity, and that is God. It's the ultimate answer to the question, how long will mercy wait? So here we have the answers to the questions I asked here in the beginning of this study. It's the point where the cancer of sin, which if not dealt with becomes terminal, and the opportunity for spiritual healing, it's over. It's a solemn, yet the culmination of a merciful act by God. It's a merciful act by God to bring an end to the great controversy between good and evil, ensuring that sin will never rise again. Right? So I'm going to ask some final question here in this introduction study. Because for me, this is 100% linked to existential questions, to questions that people have asked over ages. People have lost their faith in a God, in a living, loving God, because of the existence of evil and good. And that is a question, that's a statement that comes from many people. If God is all-powerful, knowing, all-loving, why does evil and suffering continue to exist? And so God allowed it temporary for the reasons. We're not going to discuss these reasons, but He's not the author. And in this context, we have the answer to this statement question: if God is all-powerful, all-knowing, all-loving, and just, He's going to stop it. Why is He waiting so long? I hope you already have the answer, my friend. It's because of you and me. Is it logically consistent to believe in a loving God who allows evil to persist indefinitely? Is it? Logically. And we have some Bible verses here supporting this statement. God's mercy is also God's patience with humanity, which is an expression of love. But judgment is certain. And so the people of Israel, the ancient Israel, they had their time of mercy. The whole blessing which was supposed to rest upon the ancient Israel was conditioned of this if of obedience. So it's linked. This is a complex study, my friends. This is not a doctrinal study. It's a life existential study. That's how I see it. God's patience is an expression of love, but judgment is certain. And therefore suffering refines our character and reveals our true obedience, our true allegiance. This is one of the reasons why God is allowing evil. He's not the author, but He's allowing it. He refines our character, refines our reaction. How do we react to evil? God is putting us at test. Would God bring spectators in heaven to evil? Have you thought about it? Or is He training soldiers? Remember that an untrained soldier is already a dead soldier. This is part of the training, suffering. And so mercy and delay of judgment. How do we deal with that? Because questions are being asked by secular people, by agnostics. And so they expect an honest answer from Christianity. And so how do you understand? That's a question I've seen. God's mercy, God's love in relation to the ongoing presence of evil. And the Bible, it's already giving us answers. And I'm just summarizing here because, like I said, this is a complex study. Mercy is extending, it's allowed to allow repentance, but it is not indefinite. History, it's a proof. God is going to say stop at some point. And that stop, it's actually right before the world it's going to totally collapse because of the evil which is pervading in the world today, because we kill the moral compass and we think that feelings and politicians and technology is going to lead us and is going to make the world function, and that's not going to happen, friends. We've already seen that. The man of peace in January, the president Messiah, he's bringing the world just yesterday to World War III. That's continuation of evil. Mean God is merciful, indifferent, or powerless? What do you think? Is God indifferent, merciful? He's like Santa Claus, he's just gonna go forever. Yeah, just do your best. There are people, even in my own denomination, that they do believe this. God is too merciful to do any close of probation. We're gonna be just like this until He comes back, and just whoop-tee, He's going to come up with His magic wand and He's going to bring everybody into some kind of a enhanced consciousness, and everybody is going to be all right. That's not the Bible I'm reading. But there are a lot of translations anyway of the Bible, so I'm reading here mostly from King James, and I'm trying to use a very good tool, which is Blue Letter Bible. It's a very good tool. God's mercy is both active and just. These are two components of God's character, the God of the Bible I'm talking about, not some imaginary God. You cannot separate them because there is no mercy without justice. Cannot exist. Justice without mercy, that's not justice. That's cruelty. And someone made that statement against God. So how long should this mercy be extended before justice must be served? In some societies today, we still have some laws, right? And if you do something really bad, there is going to be a consequence. And sometimes, we're talking about all these Epstein files, all this distraction, and Maxwell and whatever connections they have with intelligence community and so on. And there is a talk about, giving him mercy, and in exchange for that, that's kind of the human mercy. with an agenda, I would say, political agenda, whatever is going on in the background. But God's mercy has no limits, or has it? Judgment is inevitable. So number 3, sin and its consequences in the context of this study. Because sin, lawlessness, the definition of the Bible, has separated us from God and has corrupted its creation. When we no longer obey and follow the moral compass, it has brought us to the end as a consequence. That's kind of a logical, step by step. It's not random. That's not how I view it. And so if God stopped evil, that's another question in this context. Immediately when he saw that coming up in heaven, what will the consequences have been? That's a question Singularity is going to answer. Take away the free will and you have no evil. Will you have love without free will? No. And therefore God is going to be responsible for everything happening, because if I have no free will, which many people claims to not have, I have no responsibility. Right? This is where we are. So I'm not just speculating here. And so can evil be stopped? This is some of the final questions. Can God stop evil without addressing his moral compass being smashed to the ground? That's his laws. That's not possible. Because how will he judge humanity when this close of probation is going to come, if not by his moral compass? Because people are going to claim, who are you to judge me? So, ending mercy, ending evil. And that, of course, doesn't mean that God is not going to be loving continually. But there is a point of no return. These are challenging questions. And I hope I gave you some of the answers to the many questions which people are asking. Young people are asking. So please, if you find this more comprehensive, especially for young people, forward this study, because this is not about some doctrinal weird understanding coming up from some kind of denomination or some Christians. We have to see this in the full picture as much as we can as humans. This is a full context of where we are today in the world. This is present truth. It's not something 100 years from now. That's how I see it. And so how can the close of probation be an act of love? Because love, the God of the Bible, when we read the Bible, this God is both love, just, and holy. These are just 3 out of 15 major unique aspects about the God of the Bible. They belong together, they stand together, they complement each other. That's how God is active. He cannot be loving without justice and mercy. He cannot be just without love and holy. He cannot be holy without justice. So wherever we start, whatever we do, we cannot avoid. So the last one here. See, the statement is that God is cruel and vindictive, and so therefore we need to take this decision. By options we take, out of these 4 options I've presented, we are actually going to give Lucifer his answers. Was he right or was he wrong? Is he right and is he wrong? He's still making this claim, and everything he's building up today in the world, it's actually built going back on this claim. God is cruel. He's vindictive. He's only demanding obedience with no love and justice. That's the claim, and a lot of people are there. How are you going to answer this question? Maybe you have the answer for yourself. Maybe your children doesn't have this answer. And so is it more loving to allow evil forever or to bring it to a final end? What would you do if you were given the choice? Would you just let evil out of love and mercy go forever? That's not going to happen, friends, because it's self-destructive. If God's mercy and love wasn't stopping a lot of evil, we would have been eradicated for a long time ago. That's something which I'm 100% convinced. And so therefore, I believe that ending evil, it's an act of ultimate love. Right? Do you agree on that? Any disagreement, I'm open for conversation. Maybe I've got it wrong. I'm not claiming here to be perfect or to have the perfect understanding. So I'm asking you the questions. And remember, there is only one translator. There is only one translator of truth. And that's not me. And that's not another pastor. I'm not a pastor. That's not a human being. It's a divine entity. And so if we use that unity toolbox, first of all, with that entity, and secondly, with each other, I'm sure that we're going to reach to the same conclusion. And so the timing of God stopping this evil, what does it say about God's mercy and justice? What does it say, friends? It says to me that it's working in perfect harmony. God's mercy and justice, it's in perfect harmony. So if I didn't trust that, I wouldn't be here today. If I didn't experience that, I wouldn't be here today. That's quite evident that I'm here today, but that God's mercy and justice works in perfect harmony. And now, if you reject, if you know somebody who's rejecting this close of probation because of many reasons, some of them we mentioned here before, how do you reconcile this rejection with the ongoing suffering? Who's going to stop the suffering, friends? See, I'm involved a little bit. There is an organization here in Scandinavia. They're trying to have some kind of impact and influence some political decision to reduce the abortion legislation here in Scandinavia. Denmark is one of the countries that has increased their abortion level to the 18 weeks, but I've tried to see and see if we can have a conversation, because the way they're trying, as I understand, is through humanistic conversation and asking people, especially young people, to give their feelings about, and they're showing some pretty nasty, bad videos about how the abortions are being performed. That's evil in my mind, in my understanding. But I'm thinking, why would they? That's kind of manipulation if I go there, because if I'm showing you some really disgusting video about a child being molested in a womb and so forth, that's really disgusting. And would that decision be based on a moral decision? Or would that decision be based again on feelings? So we're back to square one. If we want to stop the evil, and I believe God, that's exactly what He's going to do. So for me, the close of probation, it's a major climax. It's not just, like I said, some weird doctrine. Love without justice, it's incomplete. So just to show you here that I made a timeline, and this study was just my humble attempt to introduce this conversation. This is a chronological, as I understand, a biblical chronology about this process. So there are 3 phases. I'm just showing it to you as an appetizer. Don't worry, I'm going to stop here. It has been a long. I tried to actually make it shorter, but it's so much to cover and time is short. There is a process going on here. This is a chronological process when we talk about the so-called close of probation. So there is a phase before, during, and after. That's where we are here, during the close and after the close of probation. Okay, that's just to show you. Don't worry, you don't have to read through. I know there is a lot of information. I just want to show you that I've done my homework. And if you're interested, I know there is a lot of study online, and based on this, I do have a different approach, as you probably have noticed here. I want to take these studies with whoever is interested to do it. And I like to invite you to study these points, bullet points, these steps in these phases, because I believe we are in one of the phases here already, and there is a lot of evidence for me, and I'm going to present it. I think I just made the introduction. I'll bring it here. The sealing of God's people. I'm not going there. I'm going to stop here. So if you're interested in the context of what we've just studied so far, and so we're going to start studying before close of probation. That's the blue, and that's where it's still the probation. It's open. That's why it's blue. Mercy is there. And then you have the red one. That's the final climax. And then there you have the green one. And there is a point, there is a reason why I made these colors, why it's green, and I'm going to explain that. And again, I would like you to introduce this to whoever you want, not just as a doctrinal issue or religious talk, or this belongs to this denomination or that denomination, but I want you to see it as basically a consequential climax of human history. So whatever angle you take it, you will not be able to avoid thinking and taking a decision about the evidence which I'm going to present here. So that's the next part of our study, where we're going to explore. So the first one is going to be the sealing, what this is all about. I'm going to take, as I said, a different perspective, of course, build on authoritative evidence. And I believe this understanding is vital, because it's going to connect what we talk about when we talk about the close of probation and the final preparation and so forth. Which option you're going to take, it doesn't matter. So there is so much to talk about here. I'm not going there, so I'm just going to skip this. I've started already to build on this, and this is it. We've come up to the end of this study. So I don't know if I hope you got some interesting information, because I believe, friends, this is a decisive time we live in. This is a climax of human history we're talking about. This is the final chapter in this great controversy between good and evil. And everything we know, everything we value, it's moving toward this decisive moment. Call it whatever you want. If you don't want to call it the close of probation, find another word, but that's what's going to be. It's not just another event, prophetic event. It's the ultimate final test of loyalty, faith, and character. And so it's a critical juncture for path. We have discussed about these 4 options, path. I'm not going to mention them. Which one of them are you going to take? We have seen some biblical evidence, which is, for me, it's very clear. We have seen that there is no second chance. There's going to be no escape hatch, no reset button, my friends, at WEF after this close. When the God of the universe is going to make the final statement, he that is unjust, let him be unjust, and vice versa, which path will you choose? See, this is not, again, doctrine. It's a divine mark of those who made their choice here and now, because you don't know if you're going to wake up tomorrow. So I hope if this truth has touched your heart, if you sense the weight of this moment, so I invite you to join us and everybody else in the next studies, where we're going to explore every single point of this study, important study. So the time is short, my friends, but the choice is yours. So I hope God bless you, and see you next time, God's will. Thank you.